Hey, what's up, YouTube family? It's your favorite black guy from Nebraska. Yes, it's Black People in Nebraska, and I'm here to bring you some more information in regards to the black tribe of the Irish. So I'm going to read further into the chapter, and there's going to be a couple words that are going to stick out to you, right? They're going to describe women as two things. One, a negress, and another, a maroon. We're going to go over the definition of a negress, okay? A lot of people do know what this means. They don't have to Google the definition, but there are a lot of people who may not understand what it means. So for those who do not understand and need to be reminded what a negress is, it is a black woman. Always has been, it's never been anything else. So when you read the words in this chapter that I'm going to read you, and it's going to be like 2 or 3 pages that I'm going to read because this is where the butt of the information is. You're going to understand and say, okay, they're talking about a black woman. They're not talking about a white woman, Hispanic woman, Native woman, none of that. They're talking about a black woman when they describe an Irish woman in part of this chapter. Let's go over to the other word. And the other word that you're going to see in this chapter is a maroon, right? A maroon woman, which refers to a woman who is descended of African slaves who escaped from the plantation during the transatlantic slave trade and established their own free communities, often in remote areas, forming a distinct culture known as Maroon society. Or, essentially, a woman from a community of escaped slaves who created their own independent settlements. So, not necessarily they don't have to be an African slave or an African free woman. It is a black woman that they're describing. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean she's from Africa, but she is an enslaved black woman, which is a maroon woman. So you're going to see these 2 words, okay, pop up in this chapter, and I want you to understand what these 2 words describe. So there's no question, there's no, well, it could be this, well, it could be that. No, this is what it means, and this is what it is. Either you're not going to believe the information, or you're not going to acknowledge the information. But the information is there. The sources are here. And, it is what it is. But you know what? I find it sad that there's people who, just because of the color of their skin, want to claim that these people were invisible or that they didn't exist at all. It's not enough that these people went through what they went through. And I'm not claiming to be a black Irish at all. But I'm claiming that these people existed and their story deserves to be told. But these people did exist. And then you have other people who want to continue to push the narrative that they didn't exist, they don't matter, it's not worth talking about, all because of what? What's the reason? You know why? Because the color of the skin. Obviously, people just have that much hate in their hearts. But these people have a very interesting story. They went through a lot, and you know what? They're still in existence. They just don't know who they are. So we're going to go ahead and get into this chapter where you see the description of the Irish women I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is page 10 of the book, Whence the Black Irish of Jamaica. We cannot then better begin the study of our Nati problem than by taking up the evidence adduced by John P. Prendergast, whose impartiality and candor is thus established beyond question. Mr. Pendergast's work, The Cromwellian Settlement in Ireland, appeared in London in 1865. And in Appendix 11, which is entitled Of the Seizing of Widows and Orphans and the Destitute and Transporting Them to Barbados and the English Plantations, we read, while the government were employed in clearing the ground for adventurers and soldiers, the English capitalists of that day, by making the nobility and gentry yield up their ancient inheritances. Now, these people that they're describing as enslaving, they said they are ancient. I lost my page. I'm sorry. Inheritances. That means that these people were ancient. They were old. They were been there for a long time. Not necessarily that they're from Africa or any other place. They're ancient. When you describe something as ancient, you describe it as being there for a long time. Their ancient inheritances and withdraw to Connaught, where they could wish the whole nation. They had been agents actively employed through Ireland, seizing women, orphans, and the destitute. These are these ancient people that they're talking about, seizing women, orphans, and the destitute to be transported to Barbados and the English plantations in America. So they were also going to the Americas as well. It was a measure beneficial to Ireland, which was thus relieved of a population that might trouble the planters. It was a benefit to the people removed, who might thus be made English and Christian. So they're being forced into believing in a God, not the God of the Bible, but the God of colonists. And a great benefit to the West India sugar planters, who desired the men and boys for their bondmen and the women and Irish girls in a country where they had only, now these are these words that we just discussed, had only maroon women and negresses to solace them. Now we are on the subject of the Irish women of Ireland. If they weren't black, why would they describe them as maroon women and negresses? Okay, so this is one of those bombs. I wish I had like that bombing effect that you would hear when something that's important is dropped. Boom. That's the bomb. The 13 Years' War from 1641 to 1654 followed by the departure of 40,000 Irish soldiers, with the chief nobility and gentry to Spain, had left behind a vast mass of widows and deserted wives with destitute families. These are black women, black families that are destituted. There were plenty of other persons, too, who as their ancient properties, there's this word again, ancient properties, had been confiscated, had no visible means of livelihood, just as the King of Spain sent over his agents to treat with the government for the Irish swordsmen. The merchants of Bristol had agents treating with it for men, women, and girls to be sent to the sugar plantations in the West Indies. The commissioners for Ireland gave them orders upon the governors of garrisons to deliver to them prisoners of war, POWs, meaning that you could have tried to or attempted to fight off an invasion, lost, and now you're a prisoner of war. Upon the keepers of gaols for offenders in custody, upon masters of workhouses for the destitute in their care, who were of an age to labor, meaning that they were of age to work, or if women were marriageable and not past breeding, and gave directions to all in authority to seize those who had no visible means of livelihood, so seizing the poor, the downtrodden, and deliver them to these agents of the Bristol sugar merchants, an execution of which latter direction Ireland must have established scenes in every part like the slave hunts of Africa. How many girls of gentle birth have been caught and hurried to the private prisons of these men catchers, none can tell. But at last the evil became too shocking and notorious, particularly when these dealers in Irish flesh began to seize the daughters and children of the English themselves. Wow. And to force them on board their slave ships. Then, indeed, the orders at the end of 4 years were revoked. In January 1656, the governors of Carlow, Kilkenny, Clonmel, Wexford Ross, and Westerford had orders to arrest and deliver to Captain Thomas Morgan, Dudley North, and John Johnson, English merchants, all wanderers, men and women, and such other Irish within their precincts as should not prove they had such a settled course of industry as yielded them a means of their own to maintain them. All such children as were in hospitals or workhouses, all prisoners, men and women, to be transported to the West Indies. And who were they transporting to the West Indies? All these people were of color, black people, melanated people. The governors were to guard the prisoners to the ports of shipping, but the prisoners were to be provided for and maintained by the said contractors, and none to be discharged except by the order under the hand and seal of the governor ordering the arrest. It is easy to imagine the deeds done under such a power. On the 22nd of December of the same year, orders were issued prohibiting all the shipping in any harbor in Ireland bound for Barbados and other English plantations from weighing anchor until searched, in order that any persons found to have been seized without warrant should be delivered. All measures, however, were vain to prevent the most cruel captures as long as these English slave dealers had recourse to Ireland. In the course of 4 years, they had seized and shipped about 6,400 Irish men, women, boys, and maidens, when on the 4th of March, 1655, all orders revoked. These men catchers employ persons, so runs the order, to delude poor people by false pretenses into by places, and thence they force them on board ships. Wow. The persons employed has so much a piece for all so deluded, and for the money's sake they were found to have enticed and forced women from their children's and husbands. Wow. We're going to stop right here for now, page 13, the bottom of this paragraph. But as I continue to read, you see some similarities between what American slavery was with black people and what these Irish went through. You see the similarities. Being forced to serve the god of their colonists, people who colonized them, children being taken, being labeled political prisoners, for whatever reasons. I don't know what would consider a prisoner or people who broke the law. What would that be considered? So you see all these things that occurred to these Irish individuals and how they were treated like cattle, treated like animals. And in some cases, being treated like an animal was too good. So you can see the correlation and plus the wording, okay? Negress and maroon. We saw the definition of those two words, and the Irish women were described as that. So if the women were negresses and maroons, what were the children and the men? The same thing. So this is just a bombshell I want to drop on you guys before the end of the day. Hope you guys enjoyed this content. It's your favorite black guy from Nebraska. Just as black people in Nebraska. I'm out. Peace.